Man, this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on OurScoop.com. You already know.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Scoop, OurScoop.com's podcast, Season 10, Episode 6. I'm John DeCarlo, and joined this week by Declan Landis and Johnny Zwizlak. Declan is taking pictures on his phone, clearly not focused.
Taking my B-reel, I'm locked in.
Okay.
Got to capture the moment.
You do. These moments are fleeting, Johnny.
They are.
They are. I'm gone in a few months.
This is season 10, episode 6. We got to get pumped, you know, remember the moment.
Yeah, good point. Good point. How you guys doing?
Doing well, John. How are you?
Bad. Not bad, other than the fact that I dealing with back spasms, which isn't fun.
Ooh.
Slept in 3 different beds on 3 or 4 days and planes. Yeah.
Oh, did you go somewhere?
Where'd you go?
Went to Oklahoma.
Nice. Look at him, man.
Wow.
Journalist.
Committed to the grind.
You guys are goofballs. Happy to be back with you all for another show. We'll talk about, of course, Temple's season opening loss at number 16 Oklahoma. We'll preview this Saturday's game at Navy, Dale's first conference game of the season, and we'll get to all of your mailbag questions as well. The Scoop is brought to you once again by Greenspan and Greenspan Injury Lawyers. If you've been injured while on the road or the highway and the crash was someone else's fault, the insurance company is not going to be on your side. You need us, Temple Law grads, who will fight hard to get the compensation that you deserve. We only get paid if we win, so in Pennsylvania or New York, call us today at 215-261-7359. That's 215-261-7359. And you can find them on the web at greenspans-law.com. That's greenspans-law.com. Declan, on or around this date, what do you have for us for September 4th?
Pretty stacked day, so we'll just get right into it. Obviously, thank you so much for joining us for On or Around This Day. Today, we're looking at September 4th, as that's the day this episode will release. I thought Johnny was going to help me out on that one. It's okay. We'll go into birthdays. We'll go into birthdays here. On this day in 1917, this American industrialist was born.
American industrialist.
American industrialist.
Let me just tap into my industrialist brain.
Is the son of a person that invented, I guess not invented. Well, no. It did invent
This is already
a big part of manufacturing. Was the namesake of a car dealership.
Henry
Not dealership,
Ford?
but a car. Henry Ford is the son.
Henry Ford Jr.
Oh, Henry Ford the second, close enough.
Okay, I was gonna say Henry Ford would have been just like a very young person if you were born in 1970.
He would have been.
Just
He
Henry
would have been,
Ford,
yeah.
exactly. Okay.
On this day in 1981, this American singer was born, arguably the most famous human on earth, I'd say.
I was just saying, wait, no.
Beyonce?
Beyonce.
Oh, with Taylor Swift, she would have been she's way younger than that.
Because it's like Taylor Swift and Beyonce.
Yeah,
Like,
I just heard most popular artists in the world, so I just assumed. But
no, I mean, it was a good guess. It was a very, very good guess. All right, we'll move out of birthdays because on this day in 1972, this American swimmer won his 7th gold medal during the Munich Olympic Games. He was the first person to ever do so in a single Olympics.
1972?
1972. Ooh.
Mark Spitz?
Mark Spitz.
Oh, wow.
Nice work, John. Good pull. Good pull. The back might be hurting, but the brain isn't. On this day, also in 1972, a revival of this very famous game show began airing.
What year?
1972. Big day in 1972.
Revival of a game show.
Revival of a game show.
is the game show still airing?
It is still airing, different host. Very iconic game. Iconic game
Jeopardy?
having to do with what?
Jeopardy?
No, having to do with the economy, I would say.
Wheel of Fortune?
No. You're in the right neighborhood, though.
Price is Right?
Price is Right.
The price is
Oh.
right. The price is right. On this day in 2002, this American singer became the first winner of another iconic singing reality television show. 2 points if you can name both the artist and the show.
Wait, what year was it again?
2002. Johnny, we had not yet graced this earth.
2002, winner of this game show.
Winner of this, I would say, reality TV show.
So American Idol,
Yep.
Kelly Clarkson.
Kelly Clarkson. This man's on fire today.
He is.
And finally, on this day in 2014, this American entertainer, who first gained fame in the 1960s as a nightclub and television comic known for the catchphrase, "Can we talk?" and who later critiqued celebrities' wardrobes, passed away in New York City.
In 2014.
2014.
Wait, read that again for me. Let me hear
No
it.
problem. No problem. On this day in 2014, this American entertainer, who first gained fame in the 1960s as a nightclub and television comic known for the catchphrase, "Can we talk?" and who later critiqued celebrities' wardrobes, passed away in New York City. I'd be shocked, I think, if you got
Joan
this.
Rivers?
Yeah.
Joan Rivers, and that was on this day. Did you go perfect?
He did. I believe.
I sort of
Well,
stumbled
the Henry Ford, yeah.
Henry Ford one, but yeah.
I'll give you half a point off for that. Otherwise, that was a very good round from you. That was a much needed, I think, swing in your run on this segment.
Thank you, Declan.
Yes, yes.
How did Johnny do?
Not great.
I said the price was right literally a millisecond after you, so I lost a point there.
Yeah. He's on par for like his normal, which is okay. We all just got to get 1% better every day.
That's what I'm trying to do.
And that's what you're doing, Johnny, and it's wonderful.
It's always next week, Johnny. Maybe
This
we
feels
need
like-
some more Johnny-centric questions.
Seriously.
I mean, if we had Johnny-centric events happening, I would say 'em.
I think there was one event that happened when I was born. The question that you asked, and it was the last one.
Well, I wasn't
There
born
was-
in 1917. I wasn't alive in the
No,
60s.
you're right. You're right. You're right. I'm just saying it's like those are way further for me though.
You know what's not good for building a culture?
Old jokes.
Making excuses.
Oh, that too.
No, I was just
One
pointing
and one
I
A.
wasn't making an excuse. I owned it. I said I didn't do well, but I also was just pointing out a fact that I think there was one.
Would you say that's on you?
I know it is on me. I take full responsibility for my performance today.
And for that, I applaud you.
Are you going to smash your hand on the ground like Brian Kelly did?
Oh my God, that dude is a clown.
Still
man.
happening.
I can't lie. It does feel good as a person that grew up as a Notre Dame fan. It feels good to see him fail. I won't lie.
I can
It
get
feels
that.
great.
I can understand that. I don't think he's the best. I don't think he's the best person around. I think it was
No.
I think it was a bit overblown anyway. Like when people would lead into it on social media, I thought it was going to be a clip of him getting really condescending with a reporter, and in reality, he's just getting upset. So
Yeah, he was just getting
Yeah.
mad. Yeah.
anyway, let's recap, shall we? Temple's 51-3 loss to Oklahoma. Some of the numbers from the game, which I'm sure most of you know by now. 6 turnovers, obviously the big story of the game. They were killers. Forrest Brock fumbled on Temple's second offensive series. Forrest Brock, by the way, started the game, as we said. Would have been a huge shock if he didn't. Dante Wright and Joquez Smith had fumbles in the second quarter. Those fumbles led to 17 Oklahoma points in total. At one point, though, Oklahoma had 44 points on 286 net total yards, and that was largely because of Temple's 4 first-half turnovers. They had started 3 scoring drives in Temple territory and another at their own 42. So again, that shows you just how critically important those turnovers were. Temple had just 197 yards of total offense. They went 4 of 13 on third down, averaged just 1.9 yards per carry. Again, this was a really good Oklahoma defense, barring anything surprising in the American or in the non-conference slate. This is the best defense they're going to see all season, with guys like Billy Bowen, Danny Stutzman. They have future pros, I think, at every level of their defense. Jackson Arnold, Oklahoma's 5-star quarterback, went 17 of 25 passing for 141 yards, 4 touchdowns. All those touchdown passes came in the first half. And again, those numbers are really reflective of the great field position that he and the Sooners offense were given because of the turnovers. Again, Forrest Brock played the whole game, but he completed just 12 of his 25 passes for 128 yards and 2 picks, was sacked 6 times. We'll have more on those sacks in a bit. Oklahoma did go 3 for 3 on fourth down. All of those came in the first half, but Temple held Oklahoma to just 1 of 12 on third down. And so when Oklahoma's backup running back Taylor Tatum scored on that late 8-yard touchdown run, that closed out the scoring with a little more than 3 minutes to go. That was Oklahoma's first and only third down conversion of the night. And Taylor Tatum, by the way, this is an indication of why some of these games really turn into blowouts, because when the top 25 team from a Power 5 conference starts putting in their backups, then you really start to see the disparity between, a Power 5 program like Oklahoma's and a G5 like Temple's. Taylor Tatum was the number 1 ranked running back in the 2024 class, and he's the guy who's coming into the game that late for Oklahoma. I mean, he might end up as their starter by the end of the year, but you could see how good he was. So again, gives you the idea of the disparity between the two programs when you see a guy get on the field like that. Before we start breaking down this game and reflecting on it and looking ahead to Navy, let's hear some audio from Stan Drayton and the players over the last 2 days. And first, we'll start with some of the post-game audio from Friday night. Some of my questions to Stan Drayton, Forrest Brock, and DJ Woodbury. They came out briefly for probably less than 10 minutes before they got on the bus to get back to the airport. So these are some of my questions to them immediately following Friday night's game.
How would you evaluate how Forrest played, given, I know you got to go back and watch film, but given everything that was going on around him, and how would you evaluate how he played?
Again, I've seen Forrest play better in practice than I saw him play today. We just got to get a better performance out of Forrest. First time starting, I'm not going to provide any excuses for Forrest. He's prepared himself well. But again, what I saw Forrest do in practice, for whatever reason, did not show up. Now, it's not all on Forrest. There was a couple of pressure situations where he could have been better protected. I know that last interception was a result of that. We need a running back stepping up and, stopping that blitzer on the line of scrimmage. And credit to Oklahoma. They saw a weakness there, and they started blitzing us a lot, and got them off schedule. So, in moving the pocket, I thought he made some good decisions when we did move the pocket. Then we had some drops, right? So, it's a combination of a lot. I'm just not going to blame it on Forrest moving forward.
That last touchdown they got, that was actually their first third down conversion all night. And, the defense, like you said, was put in a lot of tough positions. I think you guys were like 125th last year in third down percentage conversion to defense. Is that, I know the final score was what it was, but is that one of the things that you can build off of?
Absolutely, we can build off of that. But, here's the thing. What are we on first down and second down, right? I mean, they had some explosive plays on first and second down. I think we need to really study it and be real about it, and we got to be better on first and second down with our execution on defense.
You've got potentially the future players at every level of their defense. Is it just adjusting to the speed, or?
I mean, I think our defense is just as good, and we just didn't come out and play like we have been practicing.
They were something like 3 of 3 on fourth down and had some plays on first and second down, but at one point they were 0 of 11 on third downs. Considering how much you guys struggled on third down last year, I know you guys probably aren't in the mood for moral victories, but is that third down defense something you guys can build on, considering how much you struggled last year?
Yes, I mean, the defense that we got this year, we're aggressive, we hone in on our jobs, and we plan on showing that all year, third down we did do a great job, but we still got to fix other mistakes that we made.
What did you see from Cameron Stewart tonight?
What he's been showing all camp, he's aggressive, he's strong, he's fast, he's smart. He's going to make plays all year, so don't be surprised.
All right, before we get into a little bit of what we've heard from Stan and the players over the last couple of days, you guys have had a couple of days to digest this. I mean, what are your general takeaways from what you saw Friday night?
I think offensively, it was kind of what I expected, at least. I think when you have Forrest Brock coming in and only playing his most recent start was in front of 110 fans against Santa Barbara, and then he comes in front of 80,000 and change in Oklahoma's first game in the SEC, crazy environment. I mean, there were going to be nerves, there were going to be jitters early, and the offense showed that. But I think the main takeaway here that I had, and I'm sure we'll hear audio about it later, but a lot of the mistakes that Temple had, it seemed like they were kind of controllable. It seemed like it was a lot of self-inflicted stuff that is stuff that you can correct going forward. And with the team that you're facing in Oklahoma, I mean, that's a good sign that a lot of the mistakes were controllable and things that you can fix. And I'm sure both of you guys will agree. I mean, the defense was probably the highlight of the game for Temple, in my opinion. The way that how athletic they looked and how they were able to keep Oklahoma in front of them. There was the one big 47-yard play that they gave up, but other than that, I mean, they were really able to contain this high-powered and explosive Oklahoma offense in front of them, and just it seemed like they sort of belonged on the field with them at times. And obviously, I mean, it's Temple's a Group of Five conference. We've mentioned the disparity in the talent between the two teams, but I mean, there were times where the secondary and up front they looked like they belonged on that field. And I think a player that specifically that kind of stuck out to me was Latrell Jean. I mean, he really is a guy. I mean, we spoke to him, and he looked like he belonged on that field. Was able to get a sack, had 2 tackles, and he was really disruptive at the line. And I mean, we heard about him through the offseason leading up to this game that he was going to be a difference maker, and it seems like he's going to be that thing.
Yeah, not much to add to that other than just sitting there watching the game. Obviously, I didn't get to go to Oklahoma. I wasn't invited. But uh there were drives there where Oklahoma had the ball on a third down, and it was times where last year it was almost a gimme for the other team to convert on third down. Whether it was just because the defense was gassed or they didn't have the personnel to stop the other team. And it just wasn't like that on Friday night, which I think is my biggest takeaway is the defense was able to get off the field at times where last year they would not have, which is a massive step up. I mean, what comes to mind immediately is that Rutgers game, week 2 last year going up to New Jersey week 3 going up to New Jersey, and in that fourth quarter when it's, I believe, a 1-score game, and Rutgers starts to run away with it because they can just keep sustaining drives, and Temple can't get off the field. It wasn't like that Friday night against one of a team that should be competing for a national championship this year in their first year in the SEC. Like that is something to hang your hat on. And it could be, and I know we'll talk about it in a little bit, but it might be a good sign going forward, especially now that you got to turn around and play your first conference game.
That's what really stuck out to me. The defense looked like they belong. Like Latrell Jean, excuse me, is a clear upgrade. I mean, you look at between the injuries and the lack of talent last year, you had Conlon Green as a true freshman playing. I'm not saying his career's done by any means, but at one point they were putting guys like Joseph Apaya-Darkwa out there. They just had very little ability to stop the run. I think that pointing out that Rutgers game is a great example where they just got destroyed in the second half, particularly the fourth quarter. I mean, Beneswake, who got torched several times in coverage last year, maybe it was because he wasn't, quick enough or agile enough, but they also had a ton of communication errors last year. I don't think they were really coached well in the secondary last year. He looked much better in coverage. Jamel Johnson looked good in coverage. Toy Richardson, they weren't really getting beat. A true freshman like Sultan Badmus, who came in, again, this is not like a 5-star recruit. I mean, he played, I think, 39 snaps on Friday night. The defense, again, they were constantly put in bad situations. I mean, the one fumble from Jaquez Smith, inside the 10 was inexcusable. I mean, that's a gimme touchdown right there. That 147-yard toss, that was really their only chunk play of the game. I think their longest completions after that went for 14 or 15 yards. So again, I'm not going to sit here and tell Temple fans that they need to feel good about a 51-3 loss. You lost by 48 points, but this thing I think would have gotten wildly, wildly out of control last year with the lack of talent on the roster, lack of depth, the injuries. Again, the secondary looked much better in coverage. Cameron Stewart looked really good. He looked like he belonged on that field. So if they can carry that forward and kind of shake themselves off and say, okay, we were constantly put in bad positions by turnovers, I think there's something that they can take away from the game. Now let's talk about Stan Drayton's audio from Monday. His weekly Monday press conference fell on Labor Day this week, still had the press conference. These are some of the responses when I asked him about how he would assess Forrest Brock after watching the film after the game. He said, again, for those of you, and you know this by now, but if you're one of those fans who wants to blame everything on the quarterback and you're wondering why Evan Simon was not out there, I asked Stan about that yesterday. He addressed that, and he said Forrest was our guy and that he was ready to play. Never thought he was not ready to play. I talked about how the defense kept up against the fast offense and man coverage, how they went foot to foot with them. They took a shot at Beniswake, they took a shot at Jamel Johnson, and feels like they can take that and build on it. Talked about how Latrell Jean is a real single digit. Talked about some of the injury updates and absences. So Zay Baines wasn't there. Dewan Black still out, as we reported last week. There's a chance he might come back after week 2. Luke Watson's injury, that's the one piece of bad news. Stan called it a significant injury. He said he's going to be out for a while. Zay Baines, Stan said he has some things he's got to live through for a week or two. So here's Stan. This is part of Monday's press conference with the media and some of the questions I asked of Stan Drayton.
You thought Forrest and the offense looked a little rattled. You said they were doing things that they didn't do in practice.
Yeah.
Now that you got the chance to watch the film, how would you assess the whole thing in terms of the protection, his ball placement, stuff like that? What did you see that he hadn't immediately?
Yeah, it was, what you got out there is you got a lot of talented football players that are experiencing the game for the first time. There's not a whole lot of playing experience that Forrest has, and so those jitters were real, and we had to fight him through it, get everything settled down that way. From a protection standpoint, I know you sit there and you look at 6 sacks and you want to blame the offensive line. I'll say 2 of those 6 were just offensive line busts, miscommunication and protection. And, some of those were miscommunication by receivers that had to make some adjustments, quarterback holding on to the ball too long where there was receivers that were open. The truth is in the details, right? The truth is in the details. But, again, these are all fixable issues. We're excited about having an opportunity to fix them in practice this week. And, we'll cut it loose this week against Navy for sure.
Were you ever thinking of putting in any of the other guys, or did you kind of say we want to see the whole game through with?
Well, again, Forrest is our guy, and when you have a guy who hadn't played a whole lot of football, it's not the smart thing to do is to take him out of a game situation where he can gain that experience. I wanted to see how Forrest was going to react. There was never a time that I looked in his eyes where I didn't feel that he was not ready to play. He was ready to play. Things went sideways with the balls on the ground, so we never really got ourselves in a rhythm. But I never felt that there was a lull in effort or a disbelief in their confidence. So those guys got to play. We'll get better as we play.
After the game, when we asked you about what you guys held them to on 3rd down, you said, yeah, but what are we doing on 1st and 2nd down?
Yeah.
How do you assess the whole picture? Because at one point, I think they had 40-some points, but you guys had only given up 280-some yards of total offense. And team speed, it looked like this defense belonged on the same field. It was these guys. There were not a lot of, at least I can see, not a lot of blown coverages. Do you take anything positive out of that?
That right there you take as a positive. That's a fast offense that we played against in Oklahoma. Those receivers can roll. And we played some man coverage, and to see our guys foot to foot with those guys is a huge confidence build. They took a shot at Ben, took a shot at Jamel, and those guys were in great position to make a play on the ball. So absolutely we'll take that and build on it. We gave our defense 5 sudden change situations, and 4 of those 5 were in positive field position, for their offense. And we really put our defense in a tough situation that way. And 3 out of those 4 times, they get 3 points out of it. So just imagine if you eliminate the turnovers, eliminate the sudden changes, what does that game look like? And, our players understand the reality of that, so there's a lot of confidence that's being built from that Oklahoma game, and we'll grow from that for sure.
What did you see from Latrell when you looked at him on film? He had the sack, but looked like he was consistently.
Latrell's a real single digit. It's not only what I saw on film. He did his job. He was disruptive when he had to be. He made plays when he had to, but it was on the sideline where he kept the mojo where it needed to be on defense, and even crossed over the boundaries to offense and encouraged his offense. I mean, he's a real guy for us. So he's definitely a guy that we're going to look for when things get tough, and when things are going well, we expect him to make plays, and he's very well capable of doing all of that.
Any updates on Zay and Luke and Peter Clark?
Yeah, Zay's going to be a while. He's got some things he's got to live through for another week or 2. Peter Clark, it's a day-by-day situation. And who was the last guy? Luke Watson's. Luke Watson's going to probably be out a while. He's got a significant injury to his knee. So we'll wait and see what that looks like over time.
Any update on Juan Black wasn't out there Friday night?
Yeah, DeJuan Black is also living through a situation where he's got probably another game where he's got to sit out.
So Luke Watson injury is a tough one just because he played last year as a true freshman, both guard and tackle. So that's a hit to their depth there. James Faminu played in his absence, started in his absence. So again, Stan said when you look at the play of the offensive line, only in his estimation, only 2 of those 6 sacks that they gave up were offensive line busts. There were some where the receivers didn't adjust. There were maybe a couple where Forrest Brock held onto the ball too long. But that offensive line, it's worth noting that those starting 5, they played every single snap of the game, and getting that continuity, Stan Drayton said, was important to him. And so Forrest Brock, Latrell Jean, and Ashton Allen all spoke this afternoon. Again, we're recording this on Tuesday. You'll hear from Latrell Jean in a little bit. Again, Ashton Allen played 52 snaps Friday. Stan said he probably graded out as the best receiver in the room. He saw the most snaps of the 5 receivers who saw the field. Dante Wright had 48 snaps, not a good game, did not play well, had the fumble on the punt return, led to a touchdown, another fumble, just did not play well. Antonio Jones, Grambling transfer, 40 snaps there. All right, let's jump ahead to Saturday. Declan, first of all, are you excited for a car trip with me?
Yeah.
That didn't sound convincing.
No, I am.
I know
I'm
so.
very much excited. I've already made a road trip playlist. Can't wait for, all our stops, our sightseeing along the along I-95 and everything. So it's gonna be a good time.
Sightseeing. Where do you plan to stop on the way there?
Home.
But we don't have time to stop anyway.
I disagree. I'm right off 95, 15-minute stops. It'll be great.
All right, so kickoff's at what, 3:30? What time?
3:30. So we gotta probably be there at like 1.
Yeah, I'd like to get in there at 1. I'd stop by to say hi to Colin Thompson. Colin Thompson, former Temple NFL tight end, lives in Annapolis now with his
Perfect.
wife Sydney. They just had a beautiful baby girl. I want to stop and see him. I want to get up and get settled in the press box. So I think we should probably leave at 5:30 in the morning.
In the morning? What?
All right.
Hey, you have a fun trip. I'll Uber down there.
No, I'm not leaving at 5:30. I had enough of that last week. What's on this playlist? Keep in mind I'm driving. I'll give you 3 songs.
Okay. Number 1, obviously you're a big fan. The national anthem. It just makes sense. We're going to the Naval Academy. We might as well get in the right mind space for it.
Whose version of the national anthem? Jimi Hendrix?
Yeah, of course, obviously.
Okay.
And then the Fergie national anthem right after that.
Ooh.
I'd say number 2, just playing an entire like greatest hits of Michael McDonald album, just back to back to back to back. Because you're a big fan.
I like
And
that.
then,
Let's keep summer going. Let's keep the yacht rock going. All right.
Yeah, number 3 was actually finding a yacht rock radio station. So there you go.
Well, we can. So Yacht Rock Radio Channel 71 is going to be off the radio airwaves by the time this weekend comes around, because it's going to be after Labor Day. But you can get it on the SiriusXM app. They are not a sponsor of the Scoop, and now it sounds like they are. But
I was just thinking pulling one up on Spotify. Connect to the CarPlay, have that going. But then you can't change the channel all the time. So I don't know if that would make you uncomfortable.
It would make me uncomfortable. Johnny, if you were going with us, what would you want? Give me 2 songs you'd want on the playlist down to Annapolis.
Well, there's got to be at least one Frank Sinatra song on there.
Are you guys just saying all this stuff to humor me? I mean, Sinatra. Okay.
Well, this would be my first road trip with John. I feel like I'd have to play Frank Sinatra in the car.
Respect right there. Some respect. I appreciate it. Kyle would hate this. He'd be like, "Oh God, shut up." All right, which Sinatra song?
See, I'm stuck between That's Life and My Way. I'm stuck between the 2, and I don't know what fits the. I think it depends
What about
on.
Fly Me to the Moon?
That's a good song, but I don't.
I feel like that's a better road trip song.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But
Like That's Life
I
is a
feel
good
like
night.
when you're belting out like you could belt out those those high lyrics on My Way.
Yeah.
And like, you know what I mean? Like you'd all sing it together in unison like that. I feel like that would be a good.
My Way always makes me depressed.
If we get nice weather, Saturday could be 40% chance of rain and 77. If we get some sun on the way down, I think we got to play some summer wind.
That's a good call. And then Summer Breeze as well. Not
Seals and
Frank
Crofts,
Sinatra.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
great
impressed,
song as
guys.
well.
I'm impressed. Johnny, what was your other song?
I don't know. I feel like I see. I'm biased here because our song when we were driving down to any of those games with the Temple News, our song was always "Like a
40
Prayer" by
bars
Madonna.
by 40 bars by Allen Iverson was your song.
No, good
No.
song though.
It was "Like a Prayer" by Madonna, and with the release of Deadpool and Wolverine, with it being like the choir version, and it's been all over my like
Yeah.
TikTok for you page, that song. So that's I feel
Everybody's
like
stealing our gimmick.
and seriously,
It's crazy.
seriously,
It's crazy.
he had that gimmick first, but
Yeah,
I
get
feel
your own
I feel
thing.
like a Prayer by Madonna would be my other one just because of
I
tradition.
like it. We're gonna have Don Otto in the car too, Sam O'Neill. So we'll see. We'll see. But plenty of time. Plenty of time to get some good hits out there.
Bingo.
We will be diverting off onto Route 1 before we get to the Maryland House rest stop, right, Declan? So probably
Yeah, that makes sense.
we won't be able to get your creamy seafood bisque from Phillips.
You know, that's okay. I'll get it another day.
Yeah.
I do love Phillips, so
I like it. A little something to look forward to. Let's preview this Navy squad that Temple is going to face. I think this is a huge, huge, huge game for them. You know, it's a lot of times coaches will say that the biggest game of the year is what's the one that's right in front of you. And I think that's really true this week. Now you've got a conference game on the road. How they respond from Oklahoma, how they kind of parse all this out, how they digest this and say, okay, we lost by 48 points, but if we truly think that there are some good things we can take out of it and apply to it, we had kind of a little bit of a mailbag question along those lines that we'll get to a little bit later. How do they respond? What's going to determine a good game for Temple? This is a big one on Saturday. Navy beat Bucknell 49-21 last Saturday in their opener. So Daba Fofana is still the fullback that makes that offense go for Navy. He had 82 yards and a touchdown on 8 carries. 49 of those yards came on a touchdown run that got Navy its first points. They're running what's really, they've kind of called it like a hybrid wing T offense now, but they still ran the ball 53 times for 264 yards and 4 touchdowns. A lot of times you see high school teams running a wing T offense. Again, still a lot of the misdirection concepts and eye candy and stuff like that. But they also went a combined 10 of 19 passing for 173 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Blake Horvath went 7 of 12 passing for 108 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now, both of those touchdown passes came in the second quarter, so they weren't just throwing late. They were throwing in the first half. So they were looking to throw the ball. Defensively, Navy had 4 sacks. Jackson Campbell had 10 tackles, a half a sack, 1.5 tackles for loss, a pass breakup, a striker position, which is their sort of their hybrid safety spot. Colin Ramos had 10 tackles at linebacker. He was a pretty good player up in North Jersey, Don Bosco Prep. Luke Pierce had 8 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, a forced fumble out of that Raider position. That's their, mix of a linebacker and an edge rusher. That position really kind of allows Navy to play like more of a 3-4 team without changing their personnel. But they had their moments too. Like they allowed a 47-yard touchdown pass with a breakdown in coverage in the first 2 minutes of the game. But they settled down after that. When we talked to Forrest Brock today, when he was asked about Navy's defense, he said they're pretty much a drop 8 defense. That, of course, means that they'll have at times a 3-man pass rush, drop 8 players back into coverage. They'll show some pressure, 0 blitzes on third downs. I asked Latrell Jean about how he graded himself out against Oklahoma, how he approached their offensive line, but then also, of course, how Navy looks on film and what he can expect and what Temple can expect from them. So again, you'll get a little bit of him reflecting on last week here, but then a lot of what they're going to see against Navy this weekend. So this is a clip from our conversation earlier today. Again, we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. This is Latrell Jean coming off a good game against Oklahoma, talking in part about last weekend and then what they're going to see again this weekend against Navy.
Your head coach, Stan Drayton, was very complimentary of the way you played on Friday night. I mean, after you had the chance to watch the film, how would you grade out your own play? How would you assess how you played?
I play pretty good. Obviously, some things I got to clean up, things I got to fix technique-wise. With me, I feel like I always get better in different categories. But, I mean, I did good. We just didn't get the win, which I didn't like. I played pretty good, but the outcome wasn't what we wanted.
Where does that fall for you as a player? Obviously, you look up at the scoreboard. You guys lost by 48, but you guys got put in some tough situations with with the turnovers, and you guys got some stops. And team speed wise, it looked like you guys belong. How do you reconcile that as a player after a loss like that? Is it still possible to look at some stuff on film and say, hey, we didn't get pushed around, we can carry this forward? Do you allow yourself to like get fueled by that stuff, or do you kind of put that in its proper place and say, yeah, we still lost? Like, how do you feel about that when you look at the film?
Defensively, the way we play defense is our standard. We going out there no matter who it is. It could be them, it could be Navy, it could be anybody. That's just the standard of defense we're supposed to play. So defensively, I feel like we supposed to do as a team. We just, like I said, we just didn't finish the job I was supposed to. So we just watching film, just got to reevaluate and go out there and fix the mistakes that we did make.
The interior of their offensive line was like one of the maybe like newish parts of their offense. I mean, their center came over from SMU. They had a couple new guards. They moved the tack one side. Did you see some stuff on film or however you guys prepared for them where you thought like, hey, I got an edge here, like I can make some stuff happen like you did?
I mean, I just got faith in my ability as a player. It doesn't matter who you are. They could have been there 5-6 years. All I care. It's my preparation as a player. I just knew I was going to go in and just handle my job. Like it had nothing to do with how long they were there, how whatever. It's just my preparation. I never really looked at it, so how long they were there.
It looks like there's still some principles of what they do. Dava Fofana is still their guy who, is a fullback, kind of makes things go, but they're running like this hybrid wing tee. How different does it look in terms of what they've done in the past, and how similar does it look to what they've done?
I mean, they run the original football play, wing tee, everything like that. So I know it. Like it's them. It's two other teams that play like them, Army, Air Force, and stuff like that. So this is just a whole like different week to prepare for us. Like, all right, like we have to prepare for the stop their run, because that's what they do. They run the ball. They run it downhill. They're running it. They're coming off. Or their O line is coming off heavy. It's just that's going to be smash my football. So it's just that their whole scheme is just back. They're back to the basics. We're going to play, put the ball down. We're going to run the ball. So that's why I like how we do.
Did it look any more like they were actually making more of a concerted effort to throw, or did it still look more like they were like, we're going to run, and then try to catch you off guard by throwing?
When they were playing Buckner, they were trying to run it down the throats. They were trying to get movement on the front. They were trying to move, like create those gaps and those holes that they needed. So when they played Buckner, they were really going downhill and trying to create movement at the line of scrimmage.
All right, guys, based off of what you saw last Friday and based off of what Navy did to Bucknell, how you heard Stan respond, some of the players that we talked to today respond, what are you expecting Saturday before we even just get to some predictions? What does Temple have to do to win on Saturday?
I think on the defensive side, when you're focusing on this like wing T hybrid, I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, it's going to be a lot of run heavy and there's going to be a lot of movement, quick passes. I mean, Stan said it, a lot of the players said it. You have to be disciplined with your eyes, and you have to be confident in where you see the ball and make a play there. You can't, the second you start hesitating or the second you start getting confused on the field, it's gonna be brutal. You have to be focused, you have to be confident. And I think just from what we saw against Oklahoma, I mean, they had that at times and then there wasn't that. So I think with Temple, you have to be disciplined with your eyes on defense. And then on the offensive side, I mean, this is a Navy team that is safe with the football, and Temple obviously was not safe with the football against Oklahoma. The second you start turning over the ball and giving Navy more time of possession with the ball, you're going to start handing away points, and this game could get ugly quickly, because the time that you have with the ball is very important, because Navy's not going to give it back to you. So from Temple, you have to, at Forrest Brock especially, you have to be careful with the football and take care of it and not give Navy extra chances and more time with the ball.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Confidence is going to be big for both these squads. I mean, we already know where Temple is. We've already kind of talked about that. When we talked to Navy's head coach, Brian Newberry, yesterday, Johnny and I were on the call, and he kept talking about, they're trying to be the best team in the country from week 1 to week 2. Like, this is a big game for them as well. This is their first game in conference play. They had Bucknell. It's a little bit different, than Oklahoma. And he talked about how fast that team's going to have to play to keep up with Temple's athleticism, particularly on defense. So I think you got to play into that if you're Temple. Come out knowing that, on paper, you might be the better team in Annapolis. Like, you have every opportunity to leave with your first road win. By the way, first conference road win Since 2019, they beat UConn, who is an independent. Is now an independent. Like that's insane. Like you have the opportunity to snap that streak. That's 5 years. Like that is a long time, and this is probably their best opportunity. And I would say since Stan Drayton became coach, like this is a very good team from what we saw. Maybe not very good, but this is a solid team compared to what they've had in the past, especially on defense. Their biggest thing is going to be on offense. Can they keep themselves in the game? You mentioned the discipline. We saw that they had the discipline last year in one of their 3 wins of the season. They had better linebackers at the time, no doubt about it, but they didn't have the front 7. They didn't have the secondary that they do now. So I think they have every opportunity to win this game, but my biggest key is, can they keep themselves in the game offensively? Can they sustain more than just one drive going down the field and like you said, holding on to the ball? It's going to be interesting. I think they have every chance to do it. I think their defense is going to be probably the reason why they win the game. But if they want to win, the offense has to put together at least 3 scoring drives in my mind, 3 touchdown drives to win this game.
All right, I'm going to address more of my reasoning. That we have a mailbag question about this. Let's get to some predictions before we get into the mailbag. You guys have outlined some really good points here. Johnny, we'll start with you. Who's going to win and why?
I'm leaning more towards the optimistic side coming out of the Oklahoma game because I think talking about it on paper, Temple is the more athletic and maybe may even be able to argue the better team on paper. But when it comes down to, I think it just comes down to being disciplined. I think it comes down to, I think they'll be able to correct the turnover mistakes. Forrest Brock just has, I mean, he mentioned it. There's not going to be a bigger game than the Oklahoma game on the schedule when it comes to atmosphere and the nerves and jitters. And I think that's going to help him going into this Navy game. He'll be able to settle down and calm down and play smart with the football and play better with it. And I think this defense, is, like Declan mentioned, is probably going to be the main factor. I'm gonna say low scoring game. I'll say Temple wins 24-14.
I had 24-17 in my mind for most of those reasons. But my biggest thing is I think the run game gets going this weekend, and I think that's going to be a big factor. I think we saw E.J. Wilson look pretty good against Oklahoma, obviously looked the best of the backs. It seemed like they kind of figured out the sort of balance between getting the ball to the running backs in that third and fourth quarter, you know, whether it was in the passing game or the run game. I just think the offensive line's going to have a better week. I mean, it's another week under your belt with the chemistry, and now you've got a full game in that environment, like you mentioned. I think the running game is going to be a factor. I just think this is a team that can win this game. There's no other reason than a gut feeling that the defense is going to show up and look really solid like we saw last week. The offense, I think, will be able to get the job done for the reasons you mentioned. You know, the nerves are going to be different. It's going to be a different level. It's not going to be the jitters aren't going to be there like Stan Drayton said that they were. I do think 24-17 is what we're looking at, and I think it's a big stop on the defensive end with like a minute left.
If you would ask me earlier today, Kyle and I would always say over the years, are you trending negative or positive? And literally earlier today, and again, this is nothing more than a gut feel. I mean, we try to make informed decisions based off what we see and know. But this morning, thinking, they might need one more week to really get themselves together. But they came out of this game relatively healthy. I mean, the Luke Watson injury happened before, before Friday's game. I think they could and should win this game. If they do, I'm envisioning a 28-26 win where Navy drives down, has the chance to tie the game and send it to overtime, and they go for 2 and Temple stops them. All right, before we get to the mailbag this week, as you guys know, this season, before we get to the mailbag, Mike Greenspan of Greenspan and Greenspan Injury Lawyers, the official sponsor of The Scoop, gives us a tip each week about how you can be safe on the road. Again, Mike is the best injury lawyer you could hope to have out there, but he also wants to keep you safe on the road. So this is Mike's weekly tip about staying safe on the road, and then we will get into the mailbag here.
Hey, Temple fans. With school back in session, remember, as you drive past a school, you have to obey the reduced speed limit that covers school zones. It's 15 miles an hour, whether you're in Pennsylvania or New York. You have to be careful when you're driving during school hours. Drive at that reduced speed limit. If you don't, you're going to get points on your license if you're convicted, and you're going to have to pay some pretty steep fines. Let's make sure that we protect our children out there. Drive that slow 15-mile-an-hour speed limit during the school zone. Go Owls.
All right, we'll get to the first question. This one comes off of the message boards. This is from Cool Hand Red. I noticed Temple offered DB Jaden Lawton on August 26th, but Rivals recently revealed that he verbally committed to Houston on May 31st. What sense does this make?
So, Cool Hand Red, there's a simple answer to this. And I think you know this, but you might just be wrapped up in Temple football anger this week. So, yes, Jaden Lawton is verbally committed to Houston. But, guys, what do we know about the world of football recruiting?
Oh, it's rapidly changing every day.
Well, yeah. So, he's committed to Houston. Temple offered him. Guys are verbally committed. Verbal commitments are non-binding. So whether Tyron Carrier is recruiting him down there, I'm guessing that would be his lead recruiter. Guys verbally commit and then back out all the time, or then, for all we know, and I don't know this for sure, but yes, he verbal to Houston, a week ago? But Temple might know something where they say, hey, we're going to stay in it. We think that Houston might recruit over this kid, and we're going to be the program that's there at the end. So, Cool Hand Red, the answer to this question is very simple. You keep recruiting guys until you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are going to sign with the team that they committed to on signing day. So you keep recruiting them. I mean, when Temple got a verbal commitment, well, who's the Eagles' backup quarterback, guys?
I don't know.
It's Kenny Pickett, right?
Kenny Pickett.
Oh, yeah. Duh.
Where did Kenny Pickett originally verbally commit out of Ocean Township High School?
I believe it's a small school in Philly, Temple University.
Yes, he did. So did Pitt stop recruiting him after he verbally committed to Temple?
I'm no detective, but it seems like they didn't.
No, because he ended up at Pitt. So Cool Hand Red, you keep recruiting guys. If you have good intel and you know that you might still have a shot. Again, I am not professing to know whether or not they're going to get Jaden Lawton, but you keep recruiting guys. It's a verbal commitment. Guys get flipped in football all the time. They decommit. Sometimes programs squeeze them. Again, these are hypotheticals and nothing more. Maybe Jaden Lawton's film is not to Houston's liking in the first couple weeks of his high school season, but Temple thinks that they can see something in him. You keep recruiting him because things can change. That is the sense that it makes, Cool Hand Red. So this is very normal. Second question there, Declan. What does he have for us?
Yeah, Cool Hand Red has one more for you. And since our O-line is obviously woefully undermanned, why are we not recruiting more O-linemen?
Yeah, that's just not true. I mean, they are going to recruit more offensive linemen, but a lot of the offensive linemen that they have are young. They brought in some offensive linemen in the previous class, like guys like Evan Daly, Davre Vernew, who just are probably going to redshirt this year, and that's a good thing. That doesn't mean that they're not going to recruit more offensive linemen. This is a very, very fluid thing. Keep in mind that they might, on average, sign 10 or 12 high school guys. You're going to take more guys in the portal. You have to get old and stay old. So just because you're maybe doing a search in Rivals database and you don't see 15 offensive linemen with Temple offers does not mean that they're not going to be recruiting more offensive linemen. So I get it. You're upset. You're ticked. But take a step back here again. I'm not saying Jaden Lawton's going to commit to Temple, but I hope we've outlined why they keep recruiting a player like that. And I think we've outlined to you why you need to kind of pump the brakes there and say that they're not recruiting offensive linemen here.
The next question comes from Twitter at offthehook3. I'm not calling it X. Don't make me, Johnny.
I won't.
The question is, what are some things that if we do against Navy, you're thinking this team is good enough to get to a bowl game?
Yeah, so here's where I'm going to tell you why I think they could or should win this game. So Navy puts up 49 points against Bucknell, and I'm not knocking FCS programs. There are some good ones. But if you're a Temple fan and you're thinking this team is good enough to get to a bowl game, you're going to come out of Saturday saying, hey, they kept Daba Fofana in check. Navy's going to get their rushing yards just because of the sheer volume, just because of the sheer number of reps that they get. But if they hold him in check, and if that defense goes out there and makes you say, hey, Temple's not Bucknell. They're an FBS team that was able to stay stride for stride against Oklahoma and put some plays on tape where they looked good. I think the defense is going to show you that they were good enough to get stops when they needed and force them to throw when they didn't want to throw. And the offense is going to show you that it could start moving the line of scrimmage, that maybe an Antoine Littleton or even a Therese Worthy or a Joquez Smith, the ball security is better. A guy like Ashton Allen continues to make steps and take steps. The tight ends get involved. If they're dropping 8, now I don't profess to know how far back they're going to drop, but if they're going to drop 8 initially, then you can get guys like, Landon Morris involved, stuff like that. Then I think that's what you're going to need to see to say, hey, this team is good enough to get to a bowl game. I don't know, you guys kind of answered this earlier, but if you were to answer this question, some of the things that if Temple does it against Navy, you're thinking this team's good enough to get to a bowl game. You outlined the reasons why they could win. If you're looking at it through that lens, what do they have to do to convince you? We're driving back up 95 and Declan saying to us, we need to stop at Waffle House. We need to stop home and see my parents. When we're telling him, hey,
Crystal ball right there.
yeah, Declan, you make some valid points. But before we get to that, what did you see today that makes you think this Temple team is good enough to get to a bowl game? What is your answer, Declan?
My answer is it's like you just mentioned. They can really dominate the line of scrimmage on both ends if they can generate pressure to the quarterback and if they can stifle Navy's offense. I think that is where I would be like, okay, this is going to be a bowl game team, because at the end of the day, you don't need to do a ton. There are some quote unquote easier games on the schedule compared to previous years, but I do want to see a lot from this team this weekend before I'm prepared to be like, oh, they're going to win 6 games.
I don't know if they necessarily need to stifle them. Very few teams stifle them, again, just because of the sheer volume. But if you hold them in check enough, where they're not fullback diving you to death to set up the pass, I think if you're reasonable against the run, you got a shot. Johnny, what do you think?
Obviously, you guys mentioned the great points of the defense. I'm more focused on the offense when it comes to, oh, this team can win 6 games, because if this offense can produce multiple scoring drives efficiently and do that well while holding onto the ball and not turning over the football, I think that's what you have to look for when it comes to winning 6 games, because the defense can only do so much. If they're being put in scenarios like they were in Oklahoma, where teams are already in positive field position before the defense even hits the field, I mean, they're not going to be able to win you every game. But if the offense can control the football and score offensive drives efficiently and regularly, I think that's what I'm looking for when it comes to this game against Navy. And I don't think there's any world where we come out of this Navy game thinking that they can win 6 games. But I think if there was something that I'm looking for efficient offensive drives, different looks on offense, not just one big play. If they're able to do multiple plays and sustain drives and taking care of the football from the offense, that if they're able to do all 3 of those things while the defense still produces, I think that's a good step towards that thought process.
Next question, TU Owls fan 2004 simply says, Gabe Tanner?
Gabe Tanner, good question. Gabe Tanner is, of course, at the Perkiomen School in that very talented backcourt with KJ Cochran. Temple had offered him. I'm sure the staff was hopeful of getting Gabe Tanner, but Gabe Tanner took an official visit to Florida Gulf Coast, and who strikes again? Take a player away from Temple, that tricky Pat Chambers, who used to coach at Penn State and recruit guys like Tony Carr, Lamar Stevens. Now he's down at Florida Gulf Coast. Gabe Tanner is a really nice pickup for them. Definitely a player that Temple wanted. Our friend Ari Rosenfeld, who runs Elite High School Scouting, he pointed out on Twitter, Temple's not the only school with more resources than Florida Gulf Coast that was recruiting him. Florida Gulf Coast beat out some other programs that you would think to have more resources to get him. So it's a loss for Temple. Good job by Pat. So they did not get him. They're still recruiting KJ Cochran. Ideally, I think they were hoping to get Cam Wallace, KJ Cochran, and Gabe Tanner. All 3 of those guys know each other, have a relationship. And again, of course, Gabe and KJ play in the same backcourt at the Perkiomen School. So, a bit of a curveball for them. But tip of the cap to Pat Chambers. He's going to Florida Gulf Coast, and Temple has to move on to the next guy on their recruiting depth chart there. But yes, a guard from the Perkiomen School, one of 2 guards that Temple wanted.
Detroit Owl says, flying in a day early for the Coastal game. Where are the best Temple bars in South Philly these days?
Well, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm going to name 3 bars right off the top of my head that are owned by our friend John Longacre, who owns Owl Scoop. And so I would strongly suggest South Philly Tap Room, the American Sardine Bar, Second District Brewing Company. They're all in the Point Breeze section just west of Broad Street. Would highly recommend those. And not just because our friend John owns them. I think any of the spots along East Passyunk Avenue can't go wrong there. So a ton of good options in South Philly. Detroit Owl, if you love crowds and you want to do the cliche South Philly thing, go to Xfinity Live. If you want to be able to hear yourself talk and
Or have fun.
yeah.
Oops, did I say that? I want to add as well, friend of WHIP Radio, South House.
Yes.
Love South House. Definitely go
Yes.
down there. Anthony's great. Go check
Yes.
them out.
Yeah, so Detroit Out, you've got some options here. You've got some options. And again, if you want the huge crowds, yeah, then Xfinity is going to be your thing. I'm not trying to just clown Xfinity, but if you're looking for a little bit more of a relaxed atmosphere that's like half fun, half relaxing, then I would check out some of the places that we mentioned. Anything else that you guys have on your list? I know I didn't mean to exclude South House. They've been good to WHIP. And Anthony's
Yeah, great burgers too. One of my favorite burgers in the city. So
is it more of like a smash burger? Is it a thicker burger with the
definitely not. It's a thicker burger.
Yeah.
Very thick burger. If you are going though, get the tots as
Oh
well.
my God.
Tots are delicious.
The loaded tots are
Oh my
they're
gosh.
one of my favorite like appetizer
Oh, yeah.
pack thing in the city. I love
We have
that.
fun down there for sure.
There you go.
And final question, Temple Fan Owl says, from a reporter's perspective, how was covering the Oklahoma game live compared to other places you've been?
It was a fun atmosphere. I flew into Oklahoma City, could not get a direct flight down there, so it was fortunately all my connecting flights hit and were on time. So it was flew down Thursday because I didn't want to risk missing a connecting flight. Had a sports betting class to teach online Thursday night. Stayed in the Bricktown section of Oklahoma City. I'd never been to Oklahoma City before, so some stuff to do there. I wish I would have more time to walk around the city. Would have liked to have seen the memorial. Norman itself, pretty cool. Got to actually stop in, see the offices of the Daily Oklahoman, which was nice. Again, for my full-time job at Temple, I'm the managing director of student media. So I got to see Seth Prince, who advises the Daily Oklahoman. Just want to give him a quick shout out. They do a great job down there. So I got to see a little bit of the campus. Nice atmosphere, fun atmosphere. They said it was a sellout. I saw some empty seats up top, but I think they said it was something like the 152nd sellout or something crazy, or 50. I'm off with that, but they said it was a sellout. I mean, it was a good crowd. When you are driving into Norman, and I forget the main drag, when you come off of I-35, I believe it is, and you're coming into Norman, it starts getting, like 3 hours before game time, they have a lot of the other roads blocked off, and it's just one way in. So nice atmosphere. I don't know that I would compare it to a Notre Dame. It's not even as big and overwhelming as what you'd see at Penn State, but it was nice. It was fun. I'm a little different. Like sometimes I like the vibe of where I'm going. Well, hey, BC, credit to them. Just notched a big win over Florida State. I loved going up to BC to cover a game. I mean, they're not a football powerhouse, but I wouldn't put it at the top of my list of games that I've covered, but it was cool to have the experience. I will say one of the things I noticed, and I was on, I think it's 105.7, the franchise, their main FM station down there that covers Oklahoma football. They had me on before the game last week, talked to a couple of their guys who were really nice, really cool to talk to. Pre-game and post-game on Friday, it was a lot of what you'd expect from a smaller city local station where they had no respect for Temple, did not name a coach, a player, anything like that. And again, they end up winning 51-3. But when I was driving back after following my story, there was a late night show. I could not tell you the name of the hosts. And they had another local personality on. And the people who were calling in, they were very clearly bothered that Oklahoma did not move the ball as well as they felt they could have or should have against Temple. It was a lot of, hey, man, scored 51 points, but 7 of those points came on a special teams turnover, and they constantly had favorable field position. Then, they pretty much shut them down in the second half. And it was, you could tell that the hosts and or some of the people calling in were like, was this first game jitters, or did they really just were they rusty on offense, or is this Temple defense, some of the calls were like, well, if you can't move the ball that well against Temple, how are you going to do it in the SEC? There were some fans who were like a little perturbed. Again, you'd look at the score in a vacuum and say, well, they coasted to a win, and they did. But you could tell that the hosts and some of the fans were a little concerned by the fact that Temple was able to stay, as Stanford, I think Stan said, what, foot to foot with them, stride for stride with them on defense. So there was a little bit of that, like, hey, we're not supposed to look like that against Temple. And I think they were trying to reconcile whether, oh, this Temple defense, hey, tip of the cap to them, or is it just what Oklahoma didn't do? That was one of my takeaways. I mean, I was just driving back at that point, looking to get back to my hotel, get back, fall asleep, wake up the next morning, fly back. But solid trip. I wouldn't put it at the top of my list, but a cool atmosphere. I'm glad I got to see it. It was fun.
Would you say that's your top five there? Is BC, Penn State, Notre Dame? What are the other venues?
We're talking about it this weekend. A different vibe, different setting, but I just as much enjoyed the atmosphere at the service academies. The trip down to Annapolis is fun. Great atmosphere down there. Beautiful drive. Great atmosphere, a lot of fan support down there, regardless of how well they're playing. And then next season, I believe they go to Army, right? I love covering a game up at Army. Army obviously has never really had the talent that Oklahoma has, but I would put those venues on my list as well. So again, happy to have seen it. I'm probably still, I mean, it was a 1 hour time difference. It's not like I flew to a different country, but it was just constantly on the go, still catching up on sleep and work. So very cool atmosphere. In terms of like your big time venues, yeah, I'd put it up there, but there are some of those other trips, like I said, that I enjoyed just as much at Army, at Navy, at BC, Notre Dame, Penn State, programs like that. Even covering a Pitt game at Heinz Field. I know that wasn't at the old Pitt Stadium or anything like that, but Maryland's a cool atmosphere. It's up there. It was definitely a cool experience. I would imagine that if I saw a game at LSU, if I saw a game at Florida, I might be a little bit more blown away. But, they bring out the covered wagon and the horses and stuff like that. So they definitely have their thing. You walk in the stadium, you see the pictures of the players that have gone through there, like Kyler Murray, Sam Bradford. Historic program. It was fun. It was fun. Wouldn't put it at the top of the list, but it was a solid time. Did you guys have a nice weekend? And closing things out here, any words of wisdom for us, for the listeners?
Words of wisdom. I don't have a lot of wisdom, especially not a lot to give out, unfortunately. But I can't thank them enough for listening this long. What's that?
Because it would cost us?
No, it definitely wouldn't. It's just I don't have a lot. You know what I'm saying? So
he's trying to keep it for himself.
No, it's not even that. I just don't have a lot. That's all it is. Like, what am I going to say, other than thank you for listening. And I appreciate you for taking time out of your life to spend with us,
That's sweet.
Yes, it is very sweet. So again, follow our coverage if you're on Twitter or X. Again, I don't like saying X either.
It's annoying. It's
Twitter.
Very annoying.
A lot that's annoying about Twitter. It's a necessary evil right now. But again, follow us on Twitter, @alscoop_com. You can follow me on Twitter @JDeCarlo. Declan, Johnny, give us your respective Twitter handles. Tell people where they can find your work.
I'm @Declan Landis. Nice and easy. You know what I'm saying?
I am @JazaWizBTB.
What does the BTB stand for?
Used to be for Berg to Bell. Ray Dunn, he had his own website when I was growing up. I was a contributor on it, would write for it, and it was for Berg to Bell. It covered Pittsburgh and Philly sports. I just have never changed it.
Now it stands for Bat the Boy.
Bat the Boy.
I guess so. Guess it works.
Deep cut there. Bringing our friend Ray Dunn. Mike Missinelli's producer at 97.5 The Fanatic continues to do a great job. And we will talk to you guys next week. We'll have this Navy football game to talk about. Any Temple basketball recruiting news that might break. So thanks for sticking with us for another episode. And we will talk to you soon.